This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Oliver Friedland, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources. Thank you very much for joining us today, Oliver. How are you doing? I know you're recently back from the Rule Symposium in Florida.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Mark. I apologize in advance. It was a long week and I just got the red eye back. So a little bit tired, but looking forward to catching up today.
Good. Okay. And can you give us an idea what the show was like, what the vibe was like on the ground, what the interest was there for different mining companies and metals?
Yeah, of course. So I think the first thing just to note here is that the Rule Symposium is dominantly or predominantly a U.S. Investor-focused conference. So most of the people that we spoke to at the conference were U.S. citizens. So it was very enlightening and encouraging and exciting to speak to a sort of a different investor group. I think the main takeaway point was the U.S. Most U.S. investors are really engaged in junior mining and the metals sector. They're looking forward to getting exposure to the metals. On top of that, the gold metal story, I think specifically resonated, which was looking to shore up and domesticate, supply chains of critical metals like tungsten, reducing dependence on China. U.S. citizens, I think in general, a very patriotic bunch. So I think the story and golden metals sort of angle very much resonated with most people that I spoke to, which was encouraging.
Yes, that homegrown element, of course, that Golden Metal Resources. So you found there was a lot of appetite for investors. They're looking for opportunities, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's also interesting to note is that, the people that I spoke to, they seem to be really long-term investors. They kind of see where the puck's going. They see where metals are going to be in 5-10 years. They're looking to take positions and ultimately hold on to them. So that was really encouraging. Another thing to note, Mark, is Robert Friedland did sort of the keynote speech at the end of the conference. And obviously he's a serial entrepreneur and very successful in the mining industry. And the main takeaway point from his speech was, number one, that China's been taking the United States lunch. That being the U.S. has really focused on investing in critical and battery and defense metals over the last sort of multiple decades, which has led to their dominance in the sector when it comes to things like metal, where they control, 85% of total global supply. So Robert, he's a kind of a beacon in the industry and someone that you listen to quite closely because he's made a lot of money and been sort of very successful. And his big bet right now is critical metals in the U.S. And that's where he's putting most of his money and funds and resources. So I think that was really encouraging, sitting there with the 100% ownership of the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit in the U.S. So definitely encouraging keynote speech to end the conference.
Yes, indeed. What a great way to end the conference with Robert Friedland. That would have been a good one to hear. But thank you for giving us some of the feedback from that. I want to talk a little bit about some of the news you had earlier in the week as well. This is the MOU that you signed with Oxford Sigma, isn't it? I wonder if you could just explain what exactly this news is all about.
Yeah, of course, Mark. So I think just the first thing to note is that nuclear fusion is sort of a burgeoning industry that's certainly making waves at the moment. It's hopefully in the future going to be a source of limitless, effectively carbon-free energy. So it's obviously something that a lot of countries, including the U.S., are putting significant resources into, because obviously if that technology is can go mainstream, it's very significant for the future of the world and our carbon-free world more specifically. So the offtake that we signed with a company called Oxford Sigma, they're a specialist in the fusion industry. On top of that, some of the people that work there are specialists within the metallurgical aspects of the industry. And more in particular, the nuclear fusion walls, and just a quick science lesson here is the nuclear fusion reactors are so hot that they're trying to contain and harness energy from, that very few metals can actually line those walls and contain that essentially that energy explosion that's going on. The only metal that's been proven to actually actively contain these reactions is tungsten, because of its very high melting point. So effectively, the reactors, as they look now within this industry and a lot of these R&D facilities that they're building in places like France and the United States, have incredibly thick pure tungsten walls that sort of line these reactors. So when we got in touch with Oxford Sigma, one of the things that they expressed was the fact that not many governments, or really no governments, who are putting money into this industry are aware of the coming supply chain issues, and specifically those associated with tungsten. So what we're looking to do is collaborate and work on establishing a safe Western world supply chain for tungsten, and tungsten specifically that goes into the fusion industry.
Excellent. So would Oxford Sigma be looking to buy or offtake some of that tungsten for their own usage?
At this stage, all we've done is sign an MOU to say that we're going to work together. Oxford Sigma obviously has needs for actual tungsten products. So what we're going to do is we're going to do things like supply with, tungsten products from our, drilling core, that type of thing, to see what the different, impurity levels are within that tungsten, so they can figure out what exact tungsten products they're going to need within their specific industries. And more, I think, just broadly focusing on a Western world supply chain. So we have obviously the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit in the US. There's going to be significant needs for tungsten within the fusion industry, and there already are with some of these large facilities being built. So looking to work together and find ways to secure a Western world supply chain, which is something that we definitely want to be involved with.
Okay, so it's a collaboration really between the two of you under the umbrella of nuclear fusion and securing supply of tungsten. So there could be some interesting things that come out of that MOU or that partnership you're working on with Oxford Sigma. So we'll wait to see some updates from that. As part of the RNS as well, you announced the appointment of Dr. Alan Moran as well, I think. How does his position fit into the exploration plans at Pilot Mountain?
Yeah, of course, Mark. So first of all, Mr. Moran, he's a very highly respected geologist within the space. More specifically, he's a modeling geologist. So he's a specialist in taking all historical drilling data, put it into a model and figuring out, okay, where can we drill to increase the size of the resource? Where can we go to, upgrade the resource from, say, inferred to indicated or different levels? So he's formerly with SRK. He's a ton of experience within Nevada specifically. So he was someone that we targeted, and we're really happy to have him alongside our team. And I think just stepping back a little bit, I just want to quickly highlight kind of the various steps that we've taken with Pilot Mountain since we listed the company about 2.5 months ago now. So obviously we've been IPO'd and live in the markets for not that long, but I think, if investors go back to kind of the start, they'll see the various steps we're taking and how all these different things stack up. So firstly, the number one thing we did was complete the geophysics at Pilot Mountain. Following that, we announced the discovery of 5 additional exploration targets. Now, those targets are outboard of the majority of the in-ground resource at Pilot Mountain. So those are areas where we could potentially increase the size of the resource, which is something we're obviously very keen on doing. Following that, we signed the offtake agreement with Global Tungsten and Powders. Following that, we announced our U.S. funding strategy. We also put in place Ms. Chang Turkmani, who's helping us with that award strategy. And then the announcement today, which was the MOU with Oxford Sigma as well. Sorry, not today, but last Monday was the MOU with Oxford Sigma, as well as the appointment of Mr. Moran. So all of these things are sort of stacking on top of each other. And it's also just important to note that the offtake agreement and the MOU that we've signed certainly work into our case for non-dilutive grant funding. The U.S. government wants to understand and see the sort of the criticality of your project. So, if you have an offtake agreement with the largest undeveloped tungsten offtaking company or processing company in the United States, that's something that they look at when it comes to how they're going to fund various projects. Another important thing to note, Mark, is that we already have the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit in the United States of America. So what that means is that discoveries have already been made on our project. There's been some questions about, okay, well, when are you going to drill? And that's certainly a very valid question. However, it's important to note we have made a discovery. There's a lot of, junior mining companies out there who have not made discoveries. And obviously the need to drill to find a discovery or validate some initial findings is very high and important. However, we have a very important and a very valuable in situ resource on Pilot Mountain right now. Now, with that being said, we're putting the various steps in place, and Alan certainly fits into this. So what he's doing is he's working on modeling desert scheelite, as well as some of the other 4 deposit areas at Pilot Mountain. And on top of that, he's looking to model some of these geophysical zones that we put together. So the work he's doing, we're going to end up with an inventory of drill holes that then we can take to the team and say, okay, how are we going to focus our efforts and our funding, and the funds in the bank to now go and increase the value of Pilot Mountain. So all these steps are kind of coming on top of each other. We're now working on the actual modeling of the ore bodies and different areas. We don't want to just show up to site, and just start drilling. It's very important that we spend the money for drilling very, deliberately. We want to make sure that we know where we're going and what value we're looking to add. So the story's continuing to kind of gain momentum here. And I think as we continue to show the various steps that we're taking, investors should see how this is all going to play out. But, it's important to note that, we're in a position here that not many companies are in a position of, which is we could potentially fund drilling with non-dilutive money with a lot of the steps that we're taking, including some of these strategic steps. So if I'm able to do that, that's obviously the number one goal. I'd rather spend, government funds to drill than shareholder funds. So obviously we need to see that through. But in the meantime, we're getting a lot of these various elements and steps in place, drill targeting right now. And then following that, obviously we'll move to permitting. So we're going to continue to keep the market apprised as things progress here. But I think if you can just take a step back and look at how we're stepping up here, everything's progressing, and there's a method to the madness, so to say. And there's a reason why we're doing things in this order and moving towards what should be a really exciting future and the rest of 2023 for Golden Metal Resources.
Well, thank you very much for that, Oliver. That really does sum everything up. So thank you for your time today. Oliver Friedland, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources.
Thanks, Mark. Let's chat again soon.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.